So we'll start with where it all begins, and that's the water tower. So hook up to one of the quick connects, and this is the easier way to do it. The tanks aren't actually full right now, but I can hook it up to the water hose and then just turn the water hose on, and then it runs down the line, and I buried the line, and the line comes back up out of the ground over here, which is then going to go feed into all of these plants. And you can see where each line goes and shoves itself up into each of these beds, and then from that is where emitter lines actually pop out and then go to each one of the plants. So there's that. Starting from the front of the backyard, so this is the back of the house, up here out of this actually is this patch of bark chips, which I planted last year, which is actually supposed to be a mushroom patch, but I didn't have anything fruit this spring, so but I'm probably not going to get anything in the fall. All of this is potato plants. Something that you have to make sure that you do as your potato plants grow is when it starts to produce flowers like this, rip that off so it doesn't put any production into flowers or pollen. You want just spud production. Keep your stuff wet. Don't let it get dry like this. This is way too dry. See how it's pulling away from the wall of the pot? Way too dry. This needs to get watered like mad, yo. There's probably potatoes in there. This is actually the lid to the septic tank that I built this little thing to cover it up with, and on here we have things like this. It's an amazing smelling basil plant. There's sage and catnip. I actually I think maybe a week or two ago cut this down really low because I harvested it and it's great. But this is another some kind of mint plant. I think this is catnip. This is rosemary. I can't remember what this is. I think that's rosemary. This was actually grown as a joke, but there was a squash plant right here, and then there's a pepper plant right here, and then there's a tomato plant right here, and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't look like a tomato. It's all fallen over, and it's actually producing tomatoes. I had a bunch of really sick plants at the beginning of the garden, and I put it in here as a joke. This is, don't know. This is lemon balm. Pretty sure that's lemon balm. This is basil. I love basil. I love the smell of basil. I love everything to do with it. Basil is amazing. Basil smells so good. And we'll continue up this side of the garden. This gigantic bed, let's see, these are leeks. This was chard, and I think it's flowering now. And then we have dill right here. Those are weeds. This red auroch, kale, more chard sitting around here. This chard is actually this plant right here, actually, because you can see it leaning over. And a cabbage back there that probably isn't producing anything. You can see right there is right there. Those are dragon tongue beans. Really, really nice, tasty beans. This is all bean right here, actually. A lot of it was sugar snap peas, which has since been killed. That's what this ugly, moldy plant is. But we should have a few on here that were left to produce seeds. This might have some beans somewhere. Here's some. Those are kind of small, but it's a bean vine. It's for beans. No shit. If we come back here, we have a couple of these pots. This was borage, and here, maybe you can see some of this. I mean, see how you can't see past these trees or anything? Usually you'd be able to see past this. You'd be able to see like the neighbors' houses or something, and you can barely see down here. I don't know how well you can make all this smoke out, but it sucks and it's crazy. But it's funny when you look in this one. You see this? This is another one of my little weed plants. This was a male that I just stuck in this pot. I didn't know it was a male when I stuck it in this pot, but I just kind of planted a bunch of them randomly throughout the garden. And this one turned out to be a male, and it it's extraordinarily undersized, but nevertheless, it grew up and flowered and shoved all of its little pollen everywhere and did its thing. And it shared a pot with this mint, which you can see has been harvested quite a bit, but it's also growing and flowering, and like there's a bunch of seeds in here that need to be harvested. And then this was borage. Borage gets huge and it sucks up a heck of a lot of water, but it has nice flowers. Here's one of its flowers. Ooh, pretty. We'll take a look at the cabbage too, see if the cabbage is actually producing a cabbage. And maybe it is. We had another cabbage in here, but it was literally filled with poop and cabbage moth worms, and they just eat it up, and I peeled back some of the layers and I found it filled with. So I don't know if this needs to be ripped up or not. Hey, check it out. Here's like size for the dragon tongue beans that I was telling you about. I think deer came through again, because I don't remember this being like this. I'm gonna kill him. And then so we're on the back end of this bed, which has mostly tomatoes. That's what all this is. But it has some beans that are kind of dying off in the middle there. And then it has some old cucumber plants. This doesn't look like this actually did anything or produced anything. But there are a lot of tomatoes that are hanging around. I recently harvested a whole bunch, so there might not be as much as there usually are. Because deer had gotten in finally, and they messed up a bunch of stuff, and so she didn't want them to come and rip everything off, because they'll just rip the tomatoes off and throw them on the ground. But this is a gigantic mess. You can see how big of a mess it is. You can see like all of the ties that I've put on, like I have it going. This is one that's kind of mostly just ties all around it. You can see that it had this netting that goes across it like a ceiling, and so they kind of came up and then went out. I had to stake these around it slightly outside of, so you see, like initially I made this cage, but then they bowed out enough that I had to put these in around it and make another cage that goes around it, so you can see, because they came out enough. I did the same thing with the bed over there. But yeah, it's a huge mess tucked in here, which I need to harvest these. This is all celery seed. This celery plant had been growing in here since last year, so it overwintered, and then it's produced its seeds now, which that's what. And then actually tucked in this mess, it'd be hard for you to pick it out, but here it is. There's another pot plant hidden in here. And I'm not growing these for like the weed or anything. I want the seeds. The seeds are valuable. You can sell this stuff for like $10 a seed. It smells really nice. But this is actually done pretty well in here. Despite being, it's a lot more on the smaller side. Like, okay, so this is the stalk of the pot plant right here, and I'll show you my other ones in a second. But it's done well enough. It's producing seeds. But right next to it, this is one of my bigger ones in this. I think this is like a 7 or a 5 gallon pot. And this is not even my biggest one. And this is like still on the smaller scale for like a weed plant. But if we back up, you can see this one's pretty big. I enjoy these plants a lot. And if we get real close, you can see, hopefully, those clusters on these flowers of these seeds growing. All those like little bulbous onion things in there, those are all seeds. But this stuff isn't quite mature yet. I have another pot right here, and you can see how different this one's flowers look, and you can see even just the different structure and the way that this one grows. And then there's another one. This one's a little smaller. Again, much different structure. And then actually this is my favorite one right here. I really like this one. It's producing a lot of seeds. It's heavy with seeds and it smells good. It's not that sticky, but I don't expect it to be very sticky just because it's going into seed production. It's not really going into flower production. This is what the flower This is what the flowers will look like if I grew it for flower, but they just wouldn't, they'd be fuller. They wouldn't be so small like this because they wouldn't be filled with seeds, but like all of that is seeds. It's all seeds in there. It smells great. It's nice, and this one is kind of stinky, but fruity as well. It's very enjoyable. This bed is a monster of a bed. Let me back up and see if you can just see what this bed actually. There you go. And you see this. It's become about almost 6 feet across because these tomatoes have grown up and then they just fall out so much. I had to do the same thing that I talked about, putting another thing and then having to kind of tie it for all of them. Just absolutely all over the place. Let's see if we can see some nice tomatoes. Looks like there's some cilantro down in here, some old borage. There's a bunch of tomatoes growing up in here. I spy some romas and stuff. A whole bunch of little baby romas fruiting over here. This might end soon just because my battery is kind of dying. And then if we back up, we also see the greens bed, and deer recently came through and ate some of this stuff. I just filmed a whole video and it wasn't recording. I was just talking about lettuce seed, arugula is going to seed, this is kale, there's more red auroch over here that the deer ate. And you can see all the way over here is where the pumpkin patch has grown to. It's gone crazy. So the pumpkin patch doesn't start here, it starts right here, and that's the border of the pumpkin patch. And it has grown out there, it's grown up and around here, it's grown right here, it's grown up into the, and I'll go over there and show you these bushes. This is like all the blackberry bushes, right? And it's grown up into that, like you can see it right over there, growing even farther. And it's trying to get up over here too. And this is a mixture of a bunch of plants. But like what's going on in here? Well, I believe over here, we have this little guy coming up. We have the plant starting to grab onto the blackberries. And then over here, we've got this little guy who's grown. So that's nice. Let's see. Ow! Back this way, we enter the pumpkin patch. This direction. Stomp, stomp. We should have, right here, this guy, which is nice. And you can see some other baby fruits sitting around here. If they'll do anything, who knows? I think that's a baby fruit there. And in this patch, I also threw another pot plant. So let's see, I'll get off to the side. This one, when it was very young, actually got eaten by bugs. Look, the deer have eaten some of this, and I think this is relatively recent. But this actually got eaten by bugs down to 2 nodes and no leaves. Well, it grew back really well, I'd say. But back to the pumpkin patch. The pumpkin patch is getting afflicted by powdery mildew that you see here, and then up over in here. So the pumpkin patch grew up over here and is now crawling through the bushes here, and you can see, like, here's some baby fruit, and it's crawling and crawling, and it's climbing the tree here. But if we trail back and we come back over here, and there's some of it on the ground right here, in here actually there are some big, fat, heavy fruits from, and obviously this isn't pumpkin, this is, I think, like some type of banana squash. This is huge. This is gigantic. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. Oh my God. I'm surprised that it's so on there. And then back here, I had this whole thing bordered with tomato plants. Because when I was cleaning up the tomato plants, I'd prune them and whatnot. And so I'd have all of these little cuttings of like the suckers from the tomato plants, and so I rooted them, and then I had them in all these pots and all of that, and that's what all this is dead tomato plants, and I put them all along back here, but they were being hand watered. They're not on a so it actually became a really big pain in the butt to water, and some of them actually even grew through their pot into the coir down here, but they just, they still, none of them, I think one of them had one tomato on it, so they weren't even doing anything. They weren't worth keeping. They were enticing to the deer, so the deer came in to eat them, so I've killed them. These ones still need to be cleaned up, but you can see I've thrown a lot of them over here onto this pile. That's where I've thrown a bunch of stuff, and the pumpkin patch is just growing more and more out of the fence and wants to do its own thing. And it's got fruit, fruit here. There's fruit there that looks like it's getting bites taken out of it now. There's one. There's one. There's one. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that one or not. I can't remember. Oh, this one broke off. It is rotten. Too bad. And then over here we have this year's latest addition for the backyard, which was the horseshoe bed, which did have all these huge tomato plants that I just recently killed. So, we have some things like rosemary. There's a bunch of beans. We had a bunch of squash over here. I have another pot plant, and basil, and this is egg. That over there is a zucchini plant. We had more, but they since have been killed, weren't producing. I believe that's thyme right here. And then we have all of these little small beds that we're trying to grow greens in, but they're not really growing. Not greens, like roots. This stuff isn't really taking. And we have all of these pots of other things, and this is like, broccoli, and there's mint, there's auroch. I don't know if you saw me kill that mosquito. I think that's artichoke right there. I can't remember what these are, but these are a green. I think these are broccolis. There's some basils. This guy is really sad. Just dunk it in the water. Yeah, there's a lot of plants over here that I was meaning to actually hand water like 2 days ago. And, things happen. You don't get to that stuff. So a lot of this stuff is really dry, and you can tell that this one was sad and that this one was needing it. So that one needs a bit of stuff. The dogwood trees have fruited and have all this crap on them that the squirrels want, and so there's these squirrels up here in the trees that are constantly throwing the trees around and then dropping this fruit and then crawling through the garden. And man, I wish I could I don't remember where I'm at, but here's onions. This is great, because onions, you come over and cut a whole spear of this off, and then, that will last you like 2 breakfasts to mix it in with your eggs. I don't remember what kind of plant it is. And you can see where the moles have come through and dug up underneath all of this stuff, and then tilted all the pots. Moles are terrible. I hate them. They're disgusting creatures. There's a lot of plants over here. This stuff is really needs to be taken care of. There's a lot of issues over here right now. There's way too many slugs underneath. You can see where creatures tunnel underneath this stuff. Here's a hole. Who knows what's in that hole? Oh my God. More holes. But that's the backyard. The backyard. And I think that whole time I was watering. Okay, and so from there we'll move on to the front yard, and I'll try to talk kind of quiet because I think the baby is still asleep. So then we come up around here, and then we can enter the front yard. And this spot's not very big, so this one should go a lot quicker. So these are all tomatoes that a friend from work gave me, actually, and then this is our plum tree from the wedding. These have since actually broken. So you see this tie that's supposed to be holding them up. Well, they've kind of broken that, and they're falling all. So you can see where they've all fallen on each other. There's all these tomatoes in here, like tons of tomatoes. That are all ripening in here. Like if I dig through, I'll find some. Oh, treasure. Oh my god, that's a gigantic tomato. I don't know how well you can see that. They're also covering up my strawberry plants. There you go. Now you can kind of see this tomato. I think I actually have strawberries in here. Oh lordy. It has some dirt on it. I think I hear the baby awake now. We have a bunch of stuff that we need to come out here and pick. These are pretty big. I think these are golden jubilees. That's not a wasp, I'll have you know. Where'd it go? He's fine on it. He's not a wasp. That is a hoverfly. Anyway. This strawberry plant's not doing very well. It's a little dry. It's a little sad. And all of these actually really need to be watered. Now here's the trick to not having your tomatoes. You need to have consistent watering. They need to get watered consistently so that it doesn't suck up a bunch of water really quickly, and then it will send all of that water to the tomato. And then it splits. I feel like you can see how smoky that is. So then this emitter line runs along here, and then I affixed it along the fence. So we have things like hyssop growing right here. There's some more basil out here. This is a black-capped raspberry cane. And I love this spot because there's just a few pots right here, but then all this greenery grows around it because the pots drain. And it's one of the few spots that gets a lot of drainage. So all of this, whatever the heck this is, I think you could probably eat this. Who knows? Grows around it. This is actually motherwort. I need to harvest these seeds. You can see the seeds in there. I need to harvest that motherwort. But that's a good thick raspberry cane, man. That's huge. Growing pretty good. Deers have eaten it. You can see that, but it's really resilient. So more cool stuff growing over here. You can see we're watering right now. Blub blub. I don't know what this is. Something growing. It's in a pot. And we've got some more squashy things over here. Whatever that is. Whatever that is. And then this does actually wrap around to the front pathway. I put emitter lines over in here, and we have some like flowers over here. This is like a mint, I think. I'm gonna talk quietly. I don't know if the baby is awake or asleep. And then up here, we come away from the house, up the driveway to the island beds. We'll turn the water on, and it will drip. So we put a bucket. So you can walk along my driveway here and see those other beds that I had put in. Lots of tomatoes, yoink. And there's lots of cucumbers in there. I got some more weed. Got some big old squash plants. This was our crookneck. That thing is huge. Don't know if you can tell. Let's see if I can kill this. And then peppers. Peppers! Oh my god, do you see all the peppers? And deer came through and apparently ate my asparagus ferns. A few of them, they ate them all the way down. But look at how resilient plants are. It's already growing back. And these are dry as a bone. These barely ever get water, and they're still growing back because plants want to do what they do. This is probably my favorite one, just because it's big. It gets a lot of sunlight over here. Does really nicely. I think that's a second one that's not actually the same plant. Let's go inside. This is my hella ghetto zip tie. I made this gate all the way out of zip ties and metal beams. It's all held together with zip ties. Ah yeah, this is what moles do. Stupid moles. Tomatoes everywhere. Look at how much the tomato spills out of the bed. I'm gonna walk around this way. Ooh, check that out. There are a lot of tomatoes in here. There are a lot. Oh my god. Look at all the